This is Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
Well, never has my mum been more excited for a podcast episode or anything I've ever done. You see, my mum is a Mariah Carey superfan, not just before Christmas, all the time. She would play this song in the car every morning on the way to school without fail, to the point where I couldn't get out the car until I heard those lyrics, because I didn't know you, because I didn't know me. This one's for you, Mum. I'm Miles Galloway, and here's the story of Mariah Carey's We Belong Together. There was no artist bigger than Mariah Carey in the 1990s. She was the artist of the decade, according to Billboard, the World Music Awards Female Artist of the Millennium, and the owner of 15 number one singles in the 90s alone. And that doesn't even include arguably her biggest song ever. All I Want for Christmas and You didn't become a number one hit until 25 years after its release, and it's continued to top the Billboard Hot 100 every year since. On the surface, Mariah was on top of the world. However, it wasn't meant to last. As the new millennium struck, Mariah was going through some changes, both privately and professionally. After years of trying, she was finally exiting her tumultuous marriage to record executive Tommy Mottola. Despite filing for a separation in 1997, it wasn't until the end of 2000 that Mariah was granted her divorce. At the same time, she was leaving a bad situation with her label Columbia, where her husband was the chairman and CEO. Desperate to get out from under her soon-to-be ex-husband's grasp, Mariah went so far as to fly to Japan to meet the head of the Sony Corporation. Of course, it would require her to give them one more new album and 3 compilations, but she was finally free. And then just like that, Mariah signed a new record deal with Virgin. Get this, a 4-album contract worth $100 million. That's an unheard of amount for its time, even now. But despite being newly single and newly signed, Mariah wasn't in a good place. As she was gearing up for the release of Glitter, her feature film debut, Mariah reportedly suffered a physical and emotional breakdown. Citing exhaustion during a 2-week promotional blitz, she made a bizarre appearance on MTV's Total Request Live and began posting messages on her website that concerned fans. Mariah was then hospitalized in Westchester County, New York on July 26th for extreme exhaustion after she reportedly became so upset that she smashed some plates. Before entering the hospital, Mariah posted a message on her website stating, "What I'd like to do is just take a little break or at least get one night of sleep without someone popping up about a video. All I really want is just to be me, and that's what I should have done in the first place. I don't say this much, but guess what? I don't take care of myself." Eventually, she was moved to a facility in Connecticut and monitored by doctors for 1 month before being released. Glitter's theatrical release was delayed 3 weeks as a result, but it didn't really matter. Nothing could have saved the film from the savage critics, who called it heroically bad and infinitely mockable. In contrast to all those number one songs, Glitter became one of the decade's biggest box office flops, winning Mariah Worst Actress at the Golden Raspberry Awards, aka the Razzies. Perhaps the most damaging part of all this bad press for Mariah was that the film was marketed as a semi-autobiographical account of her life, the story of a young singer-songwriter rising up from nothing to become a big star.
Glitter is totally not my life story. My life story would make a very good movie, but it would actually have to be a mini-series with multiple volumes, and it would be really, really hard to make it happen without certain people flipping out and getting very disturbed.
The film's failure didn't help Glitter's soundtrack either, her first release for the new label Virgin. Glitter was neither a hit with fans or critics. One writer called it an utter meltdown, the pop equivalent of Chernobyl. The album was doomed from the start, as Mariah had originally planned to sample Yellow Magic Orchestra's Firecracker for lead single Loverboy. Before she could release the song, however, her now ex-husband Tommy Mottola stole the idea from her and used it for J-Lo's song I'm Real. Mottola managed to release Jennifer Lopez's song before Mariah could release hers, so she had to swap out the sample for Cameo's Candy. Years later, in her memoir, Mariah would claim that she believed her ex-husband Tommy Mottola had sabotaged the release of Glitter. And in an interview with Playboy in 2007, she brought up one key factor as to why Glitter struggled as both a film and an album. Glitter was such a bomb, but no one ever pointed out that it came out around September 11, 2001. I mean, yeah, she does have a point. One good thing did come from the Glitter promotional campaign. During an interview with German outlet TAF, Mariah was asked about her contemporaries. While she beamed about Beyoncé, the interviewer asked her about Jennifer Lopez. To which Mariah said, "I don't know her." And that, folks, is how one of the internet's greatest memes was born. Unfortunately for Mariah, that moment wouldn't really be immortalized until years later, thanks to YouTube. But in hindsight, it was probably one of Mariah's only highlights of 2001. In the span of 1 year, Mariah Carey had gone from Artist of the Decade to bona fide commercial flop. And things weren't exactly about to get much better. Depending on how you look at it, Mariah's 2002 began either as a big blow to her ego or a pretty sizable financial windfall. Virgin had decided that after the glitter fiasco, it would walk away from the deal it had signed with Mariah after only 9 months. In return, Mariah would be paid $28 million to not release any more music for the label. Quite the parting gift, I think you'll agree. The $28 million was on top of the $21 million Mariah received when she signed, so let me do my math here. $49 million for the bloody glitter soundtrack? The label's chief executive described the deal as the most prudent course of action for Virgin and EMI. Whatever you say. Speaking to the BBC, Mariah would describe the 9-month relationship with Virgin as just a complete and total stress fest. I made a total snap decision which was based on money, and I never make decisions based on money. I learned a big lesson from that. Meanwhile, rumors about Mariah's love life were filling the pages of the tabloids. In 2001, a 3-year relationship with Latin superstar Luis Miguel ended and paved the way for an on-off romance with glitter co-star R&B singer Eric Benet, who was also dating future wife Halle Berry. But the most ink was spilled on a so-called romance with rapper Eminem. She said it never happened. Well, he said they dated for 6 months. And while there's no actual proof the two ever dated, a war of words would ensue over the years that resulted in some of the great diss tracks by both artists. I gotta say that Mariah won this war because Obsessed is a total bop. It didn't take long for Mariah to find a new record label, though. She signed a new deal with Island Def Jam to distribute her own imprint, Monarchy. According to reports, the deal was for 3 albums at about $7 to $8 million each. Man, she really knew how to negotiate. Mariah's official follow-up to Glitter came out in December 2002. Charm Bracelet was her opportunity to make a fresh start, a new lease on life, she called it. In an interview with Much Music's Rick Campanelli, she explained the importance of Charm Bracelet.
And this album is definitely, to me, it's not that it's Butterfly Part 2, but it's another moment where I got to be completely and totally honest, it's a very honest, real record. I'm really, kind of like telling my story. So it means a lot to me.
Unfortunately, Charm Bracelet didn't exactly get things back on track for Mariah. While the album was one of her highest debuts on the Billboard Albums chart, sales dropped off quickly and reviews were, cruel, with many critics attacking her for losing those magical pipes. One critic called it the worst of her career, while another flat out admitted, Mariah's voice is shot. Ouch. Years later, Mariah would tell MTV that during the Charm Bracelet era, she really started second-guessing herself, saying, I realized, all right, I have to go with my gut, because everybody's got an opinion, and so many people's opinions about me are like polar opposites. They're like, we love it when she does ballads. Make her do ballads. Then they're like, we want to hear her do a hip-hop record. Why is she dressing like this? She should show less skin. She should show more. You know what I mean? I'm like, stay in your lane, and I'll figure it out. In addition to the less than favorable reviews and the disappointing sales figures, Mariah's tour saw her playing theaters instead of arenas in North America. In the music biz, they spin that as an intimate show for real fans. But once again, Mariah found her career in a rut. Following the underwhelming release of Charm Bracelet, Mariah managed to stay relevant by singing on I Know What You Want, a song by Busta Rhymes and Flip Mode Squad that reached number 3. Then at the beginning of 2004, famed music exec L.A. Reid left his job at Artista to become the new chairman and CEO of the Island Def Jam Music Group. This would prove to be a pivotal moment for both Reid and Mariah, who was in need of some career rehabilitation. Reid had just orchestrated a career makeover for Usher, who was riding atop the Billboard Hot 100 with his hit Yeah. But you already knew that because you've listened to episode 17 of Encore with Miles Calloway. With that song, Usher had become the biggest artist on the planet, and Reid was looking to do the same for Mariah. The first step was to set her up with the right producer. Enter Jermaine Dupri, Usher's longtime mentor who co-wrote and produced Mariah's 1996 #1 hit, Always Be My Baby. Well, Mariah flew down to Atlanta and the two got to work at Southside, Dupree's 10,000 square foot recording studio, and it didn't take long for the chemistry to spark. In no time, the two had new songs in the bank. More collaborations followed, and Mariah was hooking up with the Neptunes, Kanye West, Snoop Dogg, Nelly, and Twista, the fastest rapper in the world. Sorry, Twista. In November 2004, Mariah presented an album's worth of songs to L.A. Reid. At first, Mariah was planning the first single to be Say Something, the song she wrote and recorded with the Neptunes featuring Snoop Dogg. Then it was Shake It Off, her favorite song on the album. Reid felt she needed a few more bangers. Sound familiar? He said the same thing to Usher when he was working on Confessions. Must be a thing with him. Anyway, Mariah went back to Atlanta to work with Jermaine Dupri again, and guess what? They created some magic. In just 2 days, they came up with the songs It's Like That and We Belong Together.
But when I work with like Jermaine Dupri, who's one of my favorite people in the world, he's a great friend and he's a great collaborator. Sometimes we'll just come up with a concept like, okay, we want to write a ballad. We want to make it, this type of feeling. Whether it's like We Belong Together was a specific direction that we sort of had when we went into the studio, and I think we both knew where we were going. And it's just a process of feeling it out. Like, I'll start to sing a melody, he'll sing a melody in his own way, his own unique way, and I'll kind of turn that into my interpretation of that. And
with that in place, Mariah was ready to emancipate Mimi. The album is not about making the older executives happy by making a bring-down-the-house tearjerker ballad or something steeped in the media dramas of my life. What I tried to do was keep the sessions very sparse, unproduced, like in 70s soul music. That was Mariah Carey explaining to MTV what she wanted from her 10th studio album, The Emancipation of Mimi. Out of the spotlight for almost 2 years, Mariah made what many considered to be a career-saving comeback. Some had written her off after the glitter fiasco and Charm Bracelet's lackluster reception, but The Emancipation of Mimi was a statement to the world. Mariah was liberated from her controllers and back at the top of her game. Mariah would tell Genius,
so glitter was like, people looked at it like, oh, that's her downfall, that's it. So then I signed with Universal, and we did the Charm Bracelet album, but I think had they released different songs from that album, it would have done better. But, everybody was like, oh, let's have a sob story that's released Through the Rain. I wrote it. I'm not hating on my own song. A little bit, maybe, but I'm not. I don't mean to. And I do love Lullaby. But with that album, it was like there was something to prove. And then we didn't really prove it because it wasn't a big hit. Then when I was working on The Emancipation of Mimi, it was much more like, let me just really, really go deep and just try my best. And then when L.A. Reid came to the label, he was like, did you work with Jermaine yet? I'm like, you know what? We haven't gotten back together and worked together. And then we got together and, because we had written Always Be My Baby.
Of course.
That was, yeah.
Shout out to Jermaine.
Yeah, on the
You guys
Daydream
have a
album.
special chemistry.
We really do. I love JD. He's like one of my favorite people. Jermash. And then The Emancipation of Mimi became this record that I still love so much to this day.
The album presented the most intimate side of her yet, which is why she chose to use her nickname Mimi, which was only ever used by those closest to her. On her website, she posted a statement explaining why Mimi was so important to her and the album. It's just one of those little things that I've kept for myself in an attempt to have some delineation between a public persona and a private life. I'm letting my guard down and inviting my fans to be that much closer to me. More importantly, I'm celebrating the fact that I've grown into a person and artist who no longer feels imprisoned by my insecurities or compelled to try and live up to someone else's vision of Mariah Carey. I now feel I can honestly say, this is me, the real me, take it or leave it. The first single, It's Like That, revealed a fun, don't care side to Mariah that she'd likely been waiting years to express. A club-ready hip-hop record featuring Jermaine Dupri and Fat Man Scoop, the song felt like a perfect intro to Mariah 2.0, or Mimi, if you will. As fun as It's Like That was, it didn't get Mariah her next number one. That would come with her next song.
Well, a lot of people have been asking me about We Belong Together, and obviously it's a great moment for me because the song became my 16th number one single, and it really was pretty fast how it happened, and it was the last song I wrote for this album, The Emancipation of Mimi, so it was just like, everything was such a blessing the way it happened with that song. So I think people are feeling the emotion that went into it, and part of what became, I think, the magic to that record was the fact that I recorded the vocal in pretty much one take, because L.A. Reid was coming into the studio, and I knew he was like walking downstairs. I didn't have any time to finish what I was doing, and I wanted to play the song for him, and so I kind of just sang it, and my first take became the final take. So for me, that's a big deal, because I usually go back and forth and I'm like, oh, that's not good enough, I got to make it better. But I think the emotion, the raw emotion, was captured on that record because of the fact of that pressure. But I think it's a song that people can relate to, because most people have been in that situation where they feel like they're in love, and maybe it doesn't work out for whatever reason, and maybe they want to get back together with that person, and it's like their ideal situation of what they want, in terms of love.
It's fair to say that without We Belong Together, Mariah Carey's comeback may never have happened with the emancipation of Mimi. With this one song, Mariah changed the trajectory of her career. She wrote the song with Jermaine Dupri and Johanna Austin, coming up with the initial bones of the song in only 8 hours. And yet there are 9 songwriters listed for We Belong Together, because like many songs these days, it takes inspiration from others. Specifically, it interpolates and even references a couple of 80s retro soul classics. Bobby Womack's If You Think You're Lonely Now, and 2 Occasions by The Deal, a band from Cincinnati that featured not only Babyface, but also Mariah's label boss, L.A. Reid. Using these songs was key to making the song click. According to Johanna Austin, Jermaine Dupri had an issue with the second verse. He told Vogue, Jermaine came to me and he said, I need you to come up with one of those verses that I know you could do. I threw the Bobby Womack line out there and it was received pretty well. Released on March 15th, 2005, We Belong Together held strong throughout the year, spending 14 total weeks at number 1 on the US Billboard Hot 100, while topping Billboard's year-end chart. To many, it also earned Song of the Summer honors, with Khalifa Sano of the New York Times writing a column on the song's seasonal dominance. For many of us, We Belong Together has already come to seem inseparable from the season it's dominated. The Gone Too Soon lyrics match not only the season's good times, but its broken promises as well. Turn it up and you can remember all the fun you almost had. Critics across the board praised the R&B ballad in which Mariah makes an emotional appeal for her ex to come back to her as a career-redefining moment, calling it innovative and singling out her ability to spit phrases like rappers. How could we talk about We Belong Together's legacy without mentioning the music video? It's actually the second part in a 2-part narrative directed by Brett Ratner that begins with It's Like That. In that video, Mariah attends a swanky party hosted by her groom-to-be, played by Eric Roberts. You know, that guy. There's poker, there's dancing, and there's... Wait, who is that in a mask that pauses Mariah in her tracks? Why, it's her ex, played by Wentworth Miller. A big to-be-continued flashes on the screen, which brings us to We Belong Together. In part 2, it's Mariah's wedding day, but she doesn't exactly seem excited. It shows her getting ready, walking down the aisle, and then, like a bat out of hell, she's gone. Yep, good old Wentworth Miller shows up and steals her away from the bad guy, Eric Roberts, who no doubt is playing Tommy Mottola here. And about that wedding dress in the video.
The wedding dress was a Vera Wang original dress from a while ago that I actually wore on a certain occasion and had it in storage. And when we came up with the concept for the video to have the element of a wedding in it, I said, well, I do have my old wedding dress. It's still weird to me because I can't believe I was ever married, but whatever, that's another story. And I knew that we wouldn't be able to get a fabulous dress like in 2 days, so I just took that dress out of storage, and it has a 27-foot train, and it was just all hand beaded and stuff, so I figured might as well get some use out of it, and so it's my dress.
Ooh, take that, Tommy Mottola. Also, I've got to point out, that 27-foot train dragging along the ground as they drive off in that convertible. Yeah, that dress is forever ruined. Actually, the original plan was for Mariah to burn the dress at the end of the video, but as she told Andy Cohen on Watch What Happens Live, I didn't want to make a rash decision. It's better that we saved it. Something tells me that dress has never seen the light of day again. For Mariah, the success of We Belong Together was as sweet as any of her previous 15 number 1 hits. Maybe even the sweetest.
Well, I think that at this point in my life, having this success with this 16th number 1 with We Belong Together is even more special because after being kind of like out of the limelight for a minute and coming back, and then having it be a song that means so much to me, and having it really connect with the public, not only my fans who obviously mean everything to me and have stuck by me through everything, but people who may not have known my music in the past and stuff like that. It's a really great feeling, especially as a songwriter.
We Belong Together was nominated for just about every award you could think of. It took home Grammys for R&B song and female R&B vocal performance, but it was also nominated for Song of the Year and Record of the Year. It won Song of the Year at the ASCAP Awards, Hot 100 Song of the Year, plus 4 more at the Billboard Music Awards, and Choice Love Song at the Teen Choice Awards. Aw, how cute. Must have been the song of all proms that year. While it may not continue to be top of the charts every December like All I Want for Christmas Is You, We Belong Together is a stone-cold classic, all 12 months out of the year. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of Mariah Carey's We Belong Together, with new episodes of Encore every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these. This is Encore. The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
So just in time for the release of Back to Black on the big screen, I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of Amy Winehouse's Rehab. There's an old rock and roll cliche that says it's better to burn out than to fade away. Sang by Neil Young and quoted in Kurt Cobain's 1994 suicide note, it's a controversial statement. The sentiment is that if you go out on top in a blaze of glory, you'll always be remembered for what you accomplished as a hero, as opposed to fading into obscurity as an also-ran. In the internet age, the stakes are raised even higher on both ends of the cliched spectrum. On one hand, artists of all types can be lionized like never before. Heroes can be made and burnt out quickly, maintaining legendary status amongst their most loyal fans. On the other hand, there is so much art, especially music, available to us that artists can enter their flop era quicker than ever, discarded by the mainstream and remembered only as a faded pop culture footnote. So, what is better? Well, probably neither. Both outcomes are the results of the poison chalice that is fame and artistry. In recent years, artists like Lewis Capaldi and Billie Eilish have spoken out about mental and physical health and the price of fame, and have attempted to control their own narratives in a way that has allowed them to step away when needed, to not burn out or fade away. But just because it's more identifiable now, doesn't make it any easier. On July 23rd, 2011, it was announced that Amy Winehouse had tragically died of alcohol poisoning at the age of 27. With Winehouse's death, the world of music stood still. Amy Winehouse was a star, a breath of fresh air in the music industry that pulled the Motown sounds of the 60s into the 21st century with edginess, swagger, and admittedly, a sense of glorified self-destruction. Much of that glorification came from the media. Winehouse was treated as a walking contradiction. It was soon common knowledge that the biggest and possibly best artist in the world was suffering from disordered eating, a toxic relationship, and serious substance abuse issues. She was a tortured soul, prophesizing her own fate with her brilliantly haunting lyrics, an even more powerful voice, and media outlets of all persuasions were attracted to her like moths to a flame. Jeff Zizinski, the head of BBC Radio Scotland during the peak of Winehouse's success, admitted that the BBC and media in general were complicit in undermining celebrities, including Winehouse, and that public interest in the singer's lifestyle did not make her lifestyle newsworthy. Rod Mackenzie, editor of the BBC Radio 1 programme Newsbeat, disagreed, defending the media's obsession with tabloid headlines about the biggest stars. Specifically Amy, stating, if you play Amy Winehouse's music to a certain demographic, those same people want to know what's happening in her private life. If you don't cover it, you're insulting young license fee payers. As Mackenzie saw it, they were just giving the people what they wanted after all. Or as Spin's Steve Kandel reflected soon after her death in 2011 as bluntly as possible, a sort of bloodlust accounted for much of the initial explosive response to Amy Winehouse in early 2007. The natural ability was never up for debate. Combine that with an equally natural self-destructive bent, and the ensuing reception was predictably breathless. Not proud of this, but it's how your myth-making sausage gets made. If you subscribe to the aforementioned rock and roll cliche, Amy Winehouse is one of the more recent examples of a star burning too brightly and tragically immortalized herself in the process. In the years since Amy's passing, films, both documentary and fictionalized biopics, have been made about her life. Books have been written by both her mother and her father, and she's inspired beautiful street art and exhibits on both sides of the pond. Posthumously, she has continued to be one of the most fascinating artists of all time. With that being said, let's rewind a bit and celebrate Amy Winehouse the best way we can, through the incredible story of her music. First and foremost, Amy Winehouse was a jazz singer. A member of the UK's National Youth Jazz Orchestra in her teenage years, Amy was constantly being exposed to jazz through her uncles on her mother's side and her grandmother on her father's side. Her father, Mitch Winehouse, also a jazz fan, told Digital Spy that he would often duet the Frank Sinatra classic Fly Me to the Moon with Amy, admittedly quite poorly, but the song stuck with her so much she'd sing it to herself whenever she got in trouble at school to keep her spirits up. In an early interview with Much, Amy talked about her pretty normal upbringing.
Nothing. I didn't come from anywhere that I had a completely normal upbringing, you know what I mean? It was only when I began to get my own money, and time, a lot of time on my hands that I started really listening to music, people always say to me, oh, your mum and dad must have had a wicked record collection that you could just dip into whenever you want, but it wasn't like that. Like, my mum and dad didn't have that much good music, there was stuff that I learned from them when I was a kid, but it's always been my passion is music. It's the one thing in my life that I'm like 100% confident about, and no one's ever going to take that away from me.
Amy dropped out of school by 16, but she had honed her musical and writing chops enough by that age that she became the featured female vocalist with the aforementioned National Youth Jazz Orchestra. After a few years toiling as an independent artist, Amy Winehouse was signed to British pop super mogul Simon Fuller's 19 management in 2002. Fuller and 19 management knew they had something of a star in their hands, but kept her mostly secret while they figured out the best way to develop her raw talent. After accidentally stumbling across some of her undercover work with production team Lewinson Brothers, A&R rep Darkus Beast became obsessed with signing Amy as a recording artist, even though she had a publishing deal with EMI. Beast managed to seal the deal, and Amy Winehouse officially became an Island Records artist in time to release her first studio album, simply titled Frank, in October 2003. Frank, as you might have guessed by now, was an ode to one of her heroes, Frank Sinatra, but was also meant to encapsulate the nature of Amy herself, Frank. Here she is, explaining it to Much back in 2003.
As my album was out here at the beginning of June, I think. It's called Frank.
Who's Frank, or what is Frank? Or is it you just being Frank?
It's me being Frank, and it's like Frank Sinatra, and it's like, it's just a good one word, one syllable, straight head down the line, bang, one thing.
Upon its initial release, Frank was not a commercial success. It was well reviewed by critics and was pretty experimental in nature, with Dan Cairns of The Times calling the record a staggeringly assured sit-up-and-listen debut, both commercial and eclectic, accessible and uncompromising. And uncompromising it was, with elements of funk, dub, and hip-hop, as well as Amy's soon-to-be signature cheeky lyrical prowess. There is, for example, a song called Fuck Me Pumps on the album. Sorry, Mum. Frank was a classic example of a before-its-time record that didn't truly get the respect it deserved. Produced predominantly by Nas' longtime producer, Salaam Remi, who would go on to work with Nelly Furtado, Doja Cat, and Alessia Cara, among others, Amy Winehouse and Frank were seen as the antidote to the somewhat stuffy, easy-listening jazz music that had dominated the scene at the time. Amy was dedicated to her art, and she wasn't going to change for anyone, something she told Much in a way that only she could.
I don't know what to say about that and be a diplomat, because I'm a fascist, you know what I mean? I don't listen to music that I don't like, you know what I mean? I can't keep my mouth shut about people that I don't consider to be jazz. You know what I mean? It's like I'm saying, jazz is not singing dead people's music. Jazz is carrying a legacy forward, yeah? Writing new jazz, like I'm of my time. I write of my time, I'm conscious. I write of my surroundings and my time because that's important to me. I want to represent people like myself, singing dead people's songs isn't representing anyone. That's not jazz to me. I'm not trying to cut anyone down or anything, but I'm just honest like that.
The lack of success around Frank truly bothered Amy, and she wasn't quiet about it, believing that the marketing, the promotion, and even some of the production choices were not up to snuff. In a 2004 interview with The Guardian, she let loose, saying, among other things, some things on this album make me go to a little place that's fucking bitter. I've never heard the album from start to finish. I don't have it in my house. Well, the marketing was fucked. The promotion was terrible. Everything was a shambles. It's frustrating because you work with so many idiots, but they're nice idiots. So you can't be like, you're an idiot. They know that they're idiots. I hate them fuckers, man. I've not seen anyone from the record company since the album came out, and I know why, because they're scared of me. They know I have no respect for them whatsoever. Look, I know it's a terrible thing for someone to come out and say that they hate their own music. It's the worst thing you can do. My album isn't shit. If I heard someone else singing like me, I would buy it in a heartbeat. Now, with Frank behind her, Amy could focus a little more, or a lot more, on Blake. Described by Rolling Stone as a handsome hanger-on, Amy Winehouse began a tumultuous on-again, off-again relationship with Blake Fielder Civil, a part-time assistant on music video sets. From the outside looking in, it looked doomed from the start. Breakups and makeups, fights and declarations of love, Amy and Blake had a Bonnie and Clyde element to them that the media loved to exploit. One of the most perversely tragic elements of their relationship was that, much like the music Amy'd released before she met Blake, Winehouse pulled so much of the deep feeling and raw emotion out of the relationship with Blake and poured it into her music even at her own personal expense. There was perhaps no better example of this polarizing relationship between artistic flourish and personal despair than when 6 months into their first attempt at love and happiness, Blake left Amy for an ex-girlfriend. Amy was devastated and began further cementing a reputation for public drunkenness, no-showing gigs, and erratic, violent behavior. If I had 20 units of alcohol, I can get violent, particularly if I'm unhappy, she is quoted as saying to GQ in 2006. She wasn't one to sugarcoat the edgier parts of her life. Amy also wasn't eating, dangerously and dramatically losing weight, fueling more drug speculation and overall concern by her label and her loved ones that she needed serious help. Amy believed that the only help she needed was that of artistic fulfillment, and instead of completing a rehabilitation program, she flew to Miami and picked up the pen and paper, writing the bulk of her second album, Back to Black, with Blake in mind. Producer Salam Remy noted, Amy sat in my back garden with her guitar for 10 days and wrote half the album right there. She basically finished a song a day, and the entire time she was with me, there was no drinking or drugging at all. Across the album, Winehouse viscerally talks of heartbreak, infidelity, and grief, and it was clear that she was fully feeling every last word in her personal life. The album is truly a haunting piece. She's equally so confident, but in so much pain, the record is like one long walk through the seedier streets of London, taking full account of every moment, for better or for worse. People who knew Amy at that time clearly identified this tragically artistic trait, with her father admitting she only writes songs from her personal experience, and they're all more or less painful. It's a shame, but that's the way she is. Amy can be creative when most other people would be checking into a hospice. When she can hardly stand up, she's got her books in front of her, scribbling away. Somewhere in that scribbling away is a mess of confusion, frustration, heartbreak, and desire. The true story of Rehab was born. After all, it was pretty straightforward, wasn't it? Why use something as flowery as a metaphor when the facts of the matter could set you free? To Amy, it was simple. They tried to make her go to rehab. She said no, no, no. Yes, as I'm sure you're mostly aware of already, the lyrical content of Rehab is very much a true story. The pretext to it all, as Amy told an Australian music outlet back in 2008, went down like this. I was drinking a lot, I came out of a relationship, and I was just doing one destructive thing after the other, I suppose, or having a good time. And I just drank myself to the point where I was just ill, and I had to go and stay with my dad. I didn't need to go to rehab, you know what I mean? That's a cop-out. I was in trouble. My managers came around and said, you should go to rehab. I was like, what do you know? I haven't even seen you for 2 months. What do you know? I looked at my dad and said, Dad, what do you reckon? He was like, you don't need to go anywhere like that. That kind of gave me the courage to say to them, all right, I'll go. As in, I'll go, so you shut up. I just literally walked in. I mean, I had nice jeans on, like heels, face done, hair done. The guy at the facility just looked at me funny, like, why are you here? I was like, dunno. He goes, why do you think you're here? And I said, well, I'm in love. I drink a lot, but I'm in love. You know what I mean? Whatever. He said, I've just come out of a relationship and I've messed it up and he doesn't know how bad it is yet. And when he finds out what I've done, he said, well, you're not an alcoholic, you're a depressive. I was like, with one eye on the door, I was like, are we done? He was like, okay, well, you should fill out this form. We usually get people to fill out the form. I was like, well, how long is that going to take? He was like, well, it'll probably be about half an hour. I was like, no, I'm going. I was like, thank you, nice to meet you. Thank you for your time. I left. I was there for 10 minutes. It was funny, though. Didn't bother me. I got a good song out of it, so it was cool. Needless to say, despite the warning signs, it was more than cool. After the Miami stint with Remy, Amy Winehouse began working with up-and-coming producer Mark Ronson in New York City to try and put the finishing touches on Back to Black and write some more songs. As Ronson tells it, Amy inspired the entire production of the song simply walking down the street telling him the Rehab story in such a removed way, he initially thought of it more as a funny little anecdote and one worth turning into a song.
Excited.
What about this song specifically? Did you work on this one with her?
So yeah, this was one. She had written a lot of songs before she got to New York. But we were walking down the street, and like in Soho, she wanted to go get a shirt. It was her boyfriend's birthday, and she was like telling me we were catching up, getting to know each other. And she was like, I used to be kind of fucked up, and there was this time when I was like drinking a lot, and my family and my manager and all these people came over to my house, and they tried to make me go to rehab, and I was like, no, and like did the talk to the hand gesture, and I was like, because she was talking about it as such a removed thing, and she was in such a good state when I met her.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is just a funny anecdote, like. And I was like, I hate writing songs around the gimmick, but, like, there's something catchy about what you just said. You want to just go back to the studio and, like, maybe try and turn that into a song.
So she didn't recognize it necessarily as a song. She says, yeah, they try to get me to go to rehab. And I said, no.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you look at each other and go, hey, maybe that's a lyric?
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
She said it with its rhythm, and it sounded hooky. Like, she just goes, and I was like, no. And I was just like, let's just try it. So we went back to the studio. She was always so fast the way she wrote. She's like, she comes back in like 30 minutes and she's like, I got this song. And it was kind of like.
Just the music or the words?
She had the words and the music, and it was like a slow kind of blues, like they tried to make me go to. And I'm always thinking like a little poppy, like, can we speed it up? Can we make it dance?
Yeah.
You like leader of the pack. Can we go like boom, bat, bat, boom, bat? She's like, all right, yeah, we can try it. And like, that's kind of like, and then you
And what do you do? Do you lay down just the guitars and what, piano or something?
I probably did like a little like drum, like a shitty, because I'm not a very good drummer, but just did like a little boom, bat, bat, bat. And then she kind of like, I would lay a little instrumental, and I'd be like, hey, does it work if you sing it over this? And she'd go in, because she had the whole song on the guitar. All I had to do was come up with a nice beat for it.
Winehouse and Ronson got on like a house on fire. Ronson would go on to produce more of the album's most memorable moments, including the standouts You Know I'm No Good, Love Is a Losing Game, and the title track, Back to Black. Released in the UK as the album's lead single in late October 2006, Rehab was the perfect distillation of Amy the persona and Amy the artist. Winehouse had truly nothing to hide, and she was ready to expose her talent and her scars to the world unapologetically.
Why is it important for you to be so forthright in the lyrics, or
It's not. I write songs about stuff that stuff I have problems with, like like personal problems, like a messy breakup, whatever. I'd rather write a song about something than do myself in. Do you know what I mean? Or do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about who will hear certain things. Mm-hmm. I just think about feeling better about making something good out of a bad situation.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Do you ever find like any risk of putting so much of yourself out there, or could you not do it any other way?
I couldn't do it any other way. I don't give a f if people know who my name is or what I've done or whatever like that. I'm so lucky to. You're going to want to do that again, aren't you?
No. That's great. No.
Sorry, I thought you might want to do that again. Yeah, it doesn't. I'm not bothered about people hearing what I've got to say or anything. I haven't got much to say. I'm a bit of a dickhead, to be honest. But like I said, I've that when stuff goes wrong in your life, I like to be able to get over it. Do you know what I mean? And to have something good out of something bad, you know. You know, I feel a lot better about certain things that I went through because I've been able to write songs about them.
Has music always been sort of that catharsis for you?
Always, like, a song can change my whole day, do you know what I mean?
Unlike with Frank, which was majestically unfocused, Back to Black and Rehab was artistically locked in. Musically, the record was inspired more by 1960s Motown and soul than the eclectic jazz bops of Frank, but lyrically, it remained just as intense. Amy would admit that she'd been listening to a ton of 60s music in her happiest times with Blake Fielder Civil. And powered by love and heartbreak, the album was truly a timeless endeavor. After percolating slowly in the UK before truly crossing over to North America in the early months of 2007, Rehab was instantaneously critically acclaimed. Rolling Stone heralded it as a Motown-style winner with a banging beat and a lovesick bad girl testifying like Etta James. Time wrote, Winehouse is mouthy, funny, sultry, and quite possibly crazy, and it's impossible not to be seduced by her originality. Combine it with a production by Mark Ronson that references 4 decades worth of soul music without once ripping it off, and you've got the best song of 2007. Rehab would break ground in America by entering the charts in March 2007 and debuting on the Hot 100 before actually being released as an official single. Never actually a number 1 hit in the US, it quite frankly didn't need to be. Amy Winehouse's story, past and present, her alluring look and stunning voice gave her the type of mainstream appeal, hipster cred, and critical celebration that few artists ever truly experience. Although, of course, Winehouse's music career was bolstered by the success of Rehab, she wasn't really a singles artist, and fans understood it was more about the full Winehouse musical experience. At last count, Back in Black has gone more than 16 times platinum worldwide. Amidst all of the glorious artistic success that Rehab brought to Winehouse's doorstep, Amy would reunite with Fielder Civil in February of 2007, and they would get married in May 2007. The reunion was a symphony of self-destruction from the very start, and the British tabloids couldn't believe their luck. Amy would admit to violence towards Fielder Civil when drinking, and they would be photographed bruised and bloodied, as well as with drug paraphernalia over the course of their partnership. In a June 2007 sit-down interview with Rolling Stone in Toronto, writer Jenny Eliscu distills the nature of their relationship from her eyewitness account as such. Winehouse says that she's always been the kind of girl who loves looking after the people close to her. But you don't need to spend that much time around the singer to get the impression that she could really use some looking after herself. There is no doubt that they're deeply and passionately in love with each other, but there's also the clear sense that Winehouse and Blake are a part of self-destructive souls, equally capable of being the best or worst thing that's ever happened to each other. He has her name tattooed behind his right ear, and she has his tattooed over her heart. They also share matching scars, though the ones on his left forearm look older and more rigorously inflicted than hers. They are partners in crime who disappear to the bathroom with such regularity that one can't help but speculate about possible drug use. I ask her what she thinks is her worst vice. Mainly that I'm quite reckless and always throw caution to the wind, she says. And when the conversation turns to how she'd know if it was time to get one of her vices in check, she refers to Blake. Baby, if I've got a vice, when would I know to get it in check? I'd tell her, says Blake, still grinning his cartoonish grin. But would she do the same for him? Never, she says. By July, Fielder Civil would be arrested for an assault on a pub landlord in the UK and would eventually be incarcerated through to February 2009 for the assault and for allegedly using Amy's money to try and pay the victim off to not show up to court proceedings. For the record, Amy's father has denied it was her money used in the attempted bribe. Amy would begin to tour on the back of Rehab's success. Initial festival performances were praised and met with plenty of excitement, but by late 2007 it was clear that Amy needed help. A critic for the Birmingham Mail said, "It was one of the saddest nights of my life. I saw a supremely talented artist reduced to tears, stumbling around the stage and unforgivably swearing at the audience." On November 27, 2007, after other UK concerts played out to similar effect, Winehouse announced that her performances and public appearances were cancelled for the remainder of the year, citing her doctor's advice to take a complete rest. Note for a moment that none of this would slow down the commercialization of the Amy Winehouse sound, by the way. A deluxe edition of Back to Black would be released that same month. To call 2008 a tumultuous year for Winehouse would be an understatement. By February of that year, Winehouse's acclaim would be at an all-time high. Amy was nominated for 6 Grammy Awards, easily winning 5 of them, with Rehab winning Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, and Back to Black winning Best Pop Vocal Album. Amy would win New Artist of the Year, and Ronson would take home Producer of the Year. In a cruel twist of fate, Amy wasn't able to attend the ceremony because she was in, well, rehab. She'd been indefinitely refused entry into the US due to her legal issues of the time, but by the time the decision was ultimately reversed, she'd been checked into a rehabilitation program and it was too late for her to make the trip overseas. Being the star that she was, cameras were set up in a London venue for her to be able to accept her honours and perform for the awards show via satellite.
Thank you to everyone at Island Records, everyone at EMI Music Publishing, to Ray and Joe, 10 years this year, Ray and Joe. To Mark Ronson and Salam Remy. To my mum and dad. For my Blake incarcerated. And for London, this is for London, because Camden Town ain't burning down.
As you might expect, and as you've just heard there, Blake's imprisonment hit Amy hard. Blake had been taking interviews from prison and telling the media about the couple's drug habits and self-harm rituals, while Amy's behaviour continued on a dangerous path. Paparazzi would simply camp outside her Camden home, nicknaming her the Pied Piper of Camden, and they admitted she was just as likely to make them a cup of tea as she was to give them a smack if they got too intrusive. One photographer told Rolling Stone, "She's on loads of crack, but you can see through that. I just want for her to get better. I'm hoping someday for that set of pictures of her riding her bike in the park or something healthy." Multiple assault charges were laid to Amy throughout the year as the tabloids continued to follow her every move. And while she appeared to kick the hard drug habits by the end of 2008 after multiple interventions, infections, and early-stage emphysema scares, her demons continued to rear their ugly head through alcohol abuse. Amy would begin an alleged relationship with actor Josh Bowman in early 2009, and Blake would serve her divorce papers on the grounds of adultery soon after. Despite all of this, Winehouse was quoted in March of 2009 saying, "I still love Blake and I want him to move into my new house with me. That was my plan all along. I won't let him divorce me. He's the male version of me and we're perfect for each other." Ultimately, the two did get a divorce, with the final paperwork being filed in August of that year. As back-to-back fever finally began to die down in mid-2009, Amy would try her hand at performing again, but wasn't truly comfortable being back in the public eye. Her label would claim new music was on the way throughout 2010 and into 2011, but Mark Ronson stated the contrary. He had tried and failed to work with her again in the years prior, but Winehouse was in no state to record. Amy would make her way to Brazil, Dubai, and begin an ill-advised European tour in June of 2011 to scathing reviews. Unfortunately, the usual demons appeared to be to blame, as the media attributed her poor performances to intoxication. Winehouse was pulled off the road by the end of that month before making a sweet and surprise stage appearance in Camden for her goddaughter's performance of 60s track Mama Said on July 20th, 2011. Just 3 days later, Amy Winehouse was found dead by her bodyguard. The coroner proclaimed it a sudden and unexpected death, an unintended consequence of drinking. In 2012, the case was reopened, and by January 2013, it was confirmed Amy Winehouse had died of an accidental alcohol overdose. In an interview with UK outlet The Guardian, her brother Alex gave his thoughts, saying, "She suffered from bulimia very badly. That's not like a revelation you knew just by looking at her. She would have died eventually, the way she was going. But what really killed her was the bulimia. I think that it left her weaker and more susceptible." Soon after her death, the label released a compilation album entitled Lioness Hidden Treasures. In collaboration with both Mark Ronson and Salam Remy, the album served to aid the Amy Winehouse Foundation set up in her honor to help those with drug and alcohol addictions. There weren't many new or archival songs on the record. It mostly consists of remixes, covers, and early versions of album tracks. Since she was such an autobiographical artist, I think that's eerily fitting. Amy Winehouse always stood firm on the true-to-life nature of her original recordings, and so it makes sense that there really wasn't this expansive archive of songs to pick from after her death. In 2015, a controversial documentary called Amy was released, and it received high critical acclaim, with The Guardian calling it an overwhelmingly sad, intimate, and dismaying study of a woman whose talent and charisma helped turn her into a target. While originally endorsed by Amy's parents, her father distanced himself from the project when he screened it just before its release. He'd condemned the film as one that has an agenda against him, framing him as a villainous figure in Amy's life. As this episode is being written, we're just weeks away from the North American release of this biographical drama, Back to Black, based on Amy Winehouse's life, also fully endorsed by Amy Winehouse's estate. It's received mixed reviews based on the UK release. Truly an uncompromising artist and human being, we are privileged to be able to go back to black whenever we want to. It is without question that Amy Winehouse was taken from us too soon, but that in the short time she dominated the music scene, she inspired countless artists to break free from the cookie-cutter shapes and sounds of pop music. You can't help but think that artists like Lady Gaga, Adele, Alessia Cara, Ray, and Doja Cat draw a direct and indirect influence from Amy, speaking their mind and embracing eclecticism and emotion in their music. In fact, as this episode is going out for production, Amy Winehouse has just been awarded a Brit Billion Award for reaching 1 billion streams in the UK alone. R.I.P. Amy. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of Amy Winehouse's Rehab.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these. This is Encore. The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
Hello, how are you? I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of Adele's Rolling in the Deep. Yeah, before we get started, in case you didn't know, I am in fact British. And the biggest singer in Britain is Adele. And before you think I said her name wrong, that is how Adele pronounces Adele. Yeah, 2 years ago in a live Q&A with fans, she shocked the world, well, North America, by dropping this bombshell.
Where's she from? Enfield or something? Love that. She said my name perfectly.
Yeah.
He came and asked me how I say my name, and I was like, Adele.
How's
and she was
mine?
like, Adele.
They do it. Adele?
Adele.
Okay.
Great. All right, from London.
In case you didn't get that because the audio is a bit noisy, Adele pronounced her name properly again when she hosted Saturday Night Live and appeared in a skit spoofing The Bachelor.
Hi, I'm Adele Adkins. I'm 32. You may know me for being the singer Adele.
But as she admitted in that clip herself, people call her Adele. So that's what we're going to do today. Like Madonna, Bono, Prince, and Beyonce before her, Adele is one of the great monogamous superstars of our time. But in case you didn't catch her saying it just there, her real name is Adele Adkins. She has one of the most recognizable voices ever, a reported 5-octave mezzo-soprano that it's almost impossible to mistake for anyone else. At the age of 34, she was one of the youngest people ever to have an ego. And by that I mean she's won an Emmy, a Grammy, and an Oscar. And I will bet my house that she will win a Tony to complete the EGOT before she retires. Adele was born on May 5th, 1988 in Tottenham, a working-class town in northern London known best for its football club, Tottenham Hotspur, or Spurs if you're in the know. Her mum Penny Adkins was only 18 when she was born, and when she was only 2, Adele's father upped and left for Wales. He would never be in the picture as Adele grew up. From the age of 4, Adele began to sing at every opportunity she would get. When the Spice Girls emerged, young Adele would become obsessed with the girl powerful group. In 2016, she would tell Vogue, "People always think I joke about this, but the Spice Girls blew up when I was 7. And seeing them coming from a humble background, there was hope in it. It was a really massive part of my life when the whole girl power thing happened." When she was 11, her mum and stepdad moved her to West Norwood in South London, which she would immortalise in her 2007 hit Hometown Glory. It was there that Adele would fall in love with contemporary R&B and the big classic voices that would shape her voice in the years to come. She would tell Yorkshire Live in 2008, "When I was a bit younger, I was just listening to the Spice Girls and Destiny's Child. I love R&B so much. I wanted to be the next Beyonce, and I still do sometimes. But it's really hard to sing like that. All those notes are a nightmare. So I gave up on that one. The way I sing now came when I heard Etta James and Ella Fitzgerald. I was 15 or 16 and taught myself to sing by listening to the records. I'm obsessed with people's singing voices. I love trying to understand what they're feeling and listening out for the emotions. By the time she was 13, Adele had learned how to play the guitar, saxophone, and flute, which she decided to give up after she began smoking. As a teenager, she attended the Brit School, a performing and creative arts school in Croydon, South London. Notable alumni from the school include Amy Winehouse and Spider-Man himself, Tom Holland. And she attended classes alongside future stars Jessie J and Leona Lewis. There, Adele learned the ins and outs of the music industry, while honing her skills as a singer, songwriter, and musician. However, she originally set her sights on the label side of things, wanting to help sign artists as an A&R person. Adele graduated from the school in 2006 and began to think about university. She told Much Music's Sarah Taylor.
Yeah, me and my mum had an argument about university, and she wanted me to go like away up north in England, so I'd be independent and not like if I was at university in London, if I ran out of money or needed toilet paper, I'd go to her and just take it. Like, do you know what I mean? Whereas if I was away, I wouldn't do that. And I wanted to stay in London, and then she was like, we were shouting at each other. Then I ran upstairs and slammed my door, and I was like, this is why I'm staying in London. And I wrote a song, and then I played it to her, and she was like, all right, stay.
Adele wouldn't end up going to university. Instead, she got a job.
I didn't go to university. I got a record deal.
Right away.
She kept saying, go and get a job, girl. In the summer, in the holidays, I'd just lay on the sofa, just watch TV. And then she's like, go and get a job, go and get a job. So one day I went and came home, and I thought, I think I got a record deal. So.
Because at that time you weren't sure that MySpace actually had record deals.
No, yeah.
A funny thing happened when Adele's friend uploaded some of her demos she recorded at school to a MySpace page. She received a call from Richard Russell, the owner of XL Recordings, who liked her retro modern soul pop sound. At first she thought it was a joke. She would tell Entertainment Weekly, I'd never heard of XL. I took one of my friends with me to a meeting because I thought maybe it was some weirdo on the internet. XL was one of the biggest independent labels in the UK, scoring hits with the White Stripes, MIA, and The Prodigy. Adele, on the other hand, was only 18 and had 3 songs to her name. After hiring herself a manager, Jonathan Dickens, Adele signed with XL in the fall of 2006. Dickens persuaded her to cover a song by Bob Dylan, Make You Feel My Love, which would soon become her 4th song. The label set her up with a producer named Jim Abbas, who'd worked with indie acts such as Placebo, Kasabian, and Arctic Monkeys. In an interview with Creative Walden, Abbas would recall how he first met the singer.
I was actually working with a friend of hers, a guy called Jack Peñate, and we needed a backing vocalist. And I wanted to get somebody that I knew the next day or the day after. And he said, I'm actually going to call a friend of mine. So I was kind of unsure about it. And she burst in about an hour later. Really funny girl. And she did the BVs in one take. And I really couldn't quite believe how incredible her voice was. And a few months later, I got a call saying, would I be interested in working with her as a producer? And so we worked together, and we did most of her first record, and every time was 9 out of 10, and there'll be some 10 out of 10s in there, and it was very easy just to do things and get great takes. And
at first, songs came to Adele slowly, and she found songwriting to be quite challenging. She would tell the German press, when I couldn't write a song for so long, I tried to make up things, and I tried to write fictional songs or write things about other people's situations. But I never could, because I don't believe what I'm singing. I can't be convincing or sincere when I don't feel what I'm singing. But then she met a boy and fell in love. And then eventually she learned the boy had been cheating on her, which all of a sudden became a source of inspiration for her. She would tell Rolling Stone, I went to the pub where he was and punched him in the face. I got thrown out, and as I was running away, the phrase, chasing pavements, came to me. I sang it into my phone and went home and got 3 chords together. And thus, her song Chasing Pavements was born. More songs came to her, with some help from additional songwriters such as Egg White and Sasha Scarbeck, and producer Mark Ronson, who had just won Grammys for his work on Amy Winehouse's Back to Black. Adele's first single, Hometown Glory, was first released in October 2007 as a limited 7-inch on a small label called Pacemaker. The song didn't do much until it was re-released the following year by XL, but the buzz was growing for Adele. As 2008 arrived, she became the youngest artist ever to win the BBC's Sound of 2008 award, which is selected by music critics and industry figures searching for the UK's most promising new music talent. She also took home the Critics' Choice Award at the Brits, which was given to the top rising star. But all of the attention didn't go to her head. She would tell NPR, I think it's quite ridiculous, to be honest. I still can't really get over it. I'm not really bothered by awards. My Brit Award is my toilet roll holder in my bathroom. Now that's what you call luxury, right? The first song to properly introduce Adele to the world was Chasing Pavements. Released just weeks before her debut album, Adele's tale about coping with her breakup became an international hit, reaching number 2 in the UK and number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. What's funny is, in the US, a lot of Adele's fans thought she was chasing something other than pavements. She told Elle magazine,
"In America, everyone thinks I'm saying chasing pavements, which is lols. And you also don't know what a pavement is. We don't use it for the same thing. But yeah, chasing pavements, I slapped my boyfriend and was running down Tottenham Court Road in London to make sure I didn't get in trouble. And then no one was chasing after me. And I was like, you're chasing pavements, it's going nowhere."
Adele released her debut album, 19, on January 28th, 2008. She named it 19 because, well, that's how old she was when she recorded the album. It didn't take long for critics and fans to fixate on her age and how mature she sounded for someone who was only 19.
I wrote the album to get it off of my chest, to kind of get it out of my system. But it's no more than any other 19-year-old. It's just mine's magnified because it's a record that's been released around the world. I never really thought of that when I was writing it, and now I have to talk about the boy that I hate all the time. So,
oh really?
Yeah.
You still hate him?
We're friends, but I do hate him a little bit, yeah.
She called her music heartbroken soul for obvious reasons, and thanks to her gender and nationality, Adele was included in a British invasion of female singer-songwriters like Amy Winehouse, Lily Allen, Duffy, Kate Nash, Leona Lewis, and Estelle. But Adele was quick to embrace any associations with or comparisons to her contemporaries, even telling The Guardian that she wanted to assemble a supergroup and become the best band ever because they represented most women in the world. "We're not afraid to speak our minds," she explained. "And you don't need to be a doll with tanned legs, blonde hair, big boobs, and good lips." On her first trip to Canada in June 2008, Much More Music's Matt Wells asked Adele about the rise of the female singer-songwriter in the UK.
Kate Nash, Duffy, and now yourself. And all three of you had this very fast kind of rise to success. What the hell is going on over there?
I don't know, it's like some factory, they're pumping us all out. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. It's very encouraging though. It's exciting. It's good. I don't know what it is though.
Something in the water.
I think it must be.
Do you drink bottled water or from the tap?
From the tap.
There it is.
So there's going to be like 60 million people, 60 million girls from London coming over soon, taking over Canada.
Adele would quickly carve a path for herself, but one comparison she couldn't avoid was to Amy Winehouse. At the time, Winehouse was becoming regular tabloid fodder for her erratic behaviour in public due to substance abuse, which, if you missed it, I go into full detail about in our last episode of Encore. I know, shameless plug, it's the May 16th episode, in case you're wondering. Anyway, Adele would tell Matt Wells that she wasn't offended, she was flattered to receive comparisons to Winehouse.
It's a compliment. I love Amy Winehouse. I don't know why they say that. I think if you kind of get a bit pissed off that you get compared to people, it's just really pathetic because I don't think that Duffy would get annoyed with that. It's probably just label, isn't it?
Exactly.
But you in terms of like critics' eyes and journalists and people that review your album or review your live shows or just write an introductory piece about you never come into your own until like your second or third album anyway.
Right.
So I think it's inevitable that you get compared to someone, and I'd much rather be compared to Amy Winehouse than someone I don't like. So
like who?
Adele was quickly popping up everywhere on both sides of the pond. 19 was on the short list of nominees for the coveted Mercury Prize, which is awarded for Best Album Released by a Musical Act from the United Kingdom or Ireland. Hometown Glory popped up all over TV, soundtracking huge dramatic scenes in countless TV shows like Grey's Anatomy, So You Think You Can Dance, Coronation Street, and 90210. But perhaps the greatest achievement, at least in Adele's eyes, was one of her heroes, Beyoncé, calling her the British singer, separating her from the rest of the pack. But it didn't end there with Beyoncé. Adele was offered an opening slot for Beyoncé's tour by her father, Matthew Knowles, which she turned down? She told Much More Music's Matt Wells.
Right. And he said to me, "Oh, by the way, if you want to do Beyonce's tour, you can do it." And I was like, "It's like a million dates. I haven't got the stamina to do that many shows." Like,
hold on. Let's just rewind.
Okay.
He said, "If you want Beyonce's tour, you can have it."
Yeah.
And you're like, "No."
She does so many shows. I can't do that many shows. I'm not Beyonce. I can't do that many shows. So I said no. Also, the tour's only just starting. I think it's a bit tongue-in-cheek as well, because like I'm mouthy, so it's like, "Oh, by the way," and then they walked out the room. But no, the tour's just starting. I need to do my second album.
True.
And I can't do 300 shows. It's a lot of shows.
You could.
No. What, one album? I'd be like so bored of my songs.
I love it. You're just like, I could do the Beyonce tour, but I'm just not.
No.
I love it.
Anyway.
Adele was set to embark on her own North American tour, but ended up cancelling due to family issues, she said at the time. Turns out that was a lie. The next year, she confirmed to Nylon magazine that it was actually so she could spend some time with her new boyfriend, who was 10 years older than her, and what she considered her first real relationship. We refer to that period as my ELC, my early life crisis. Now I'm sober, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. It seems so ungrateful. I was drinking far too much, and that was kind of the basis of my relationship with this boy. I couldn't bear to be without him, so I was like, well, okay, I'll just cancel my stuff then. The relationship didn't last, but one good thing came out of it. She told Nylon, I got a second album out of it. So it was fine. Cancelling the tour cost Adele a big opportunity to break America, but when one door closed, another door opened. Although she didn't do the tour, Adele made the trip over to the US to be the musical guest on Saturday Night Live alongside host Josh Brolin. This was at a time when the show still provided water cooler moments, and Adele's performance, combined with a surprise cameo by then vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, remember her, was exactly that, generating huge numbers in the ratings. It's hard to think an SNL appearance could boost her career that much now, but it really did catapult Adele's profile in the US, lifting 19 up in the charts and helping it go gold at the time. And then a few months later came the Grammys. Chasing Pavements earned Adele her first Grammy for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, beating out her former classmate Leona Lewis. It was also nominated for Song of the Year and Record of the Year. Even bigger than that, Adele also won Best New Artist over... whoa, the friggin' Jonas Brothers. No one was more surprised than Adele was. She described the experience to Much More Music.
I was so convinced that I wouldn't win it.
Who do you think was going to win?
I thought Duffy would win it, or the Jonas Brothers. I thought Duffy would win it with the album, but then I thought maybe Jonas Brothers will win it because, first of all, they're nominated for a Grammy, like, which is kind of like... Well, no, I'm a big fan of the Jonas Brothers.
I'm with you.
But like the fact that they're like, they're seen as just like this pop boy band that they've been nominated for, and I thought, actually, that's really great, maybe they'll win it. So I had no shoes on. I'd taken my shoes off because I've got these huge heels. Taken my shoes off, undone my belt, had chewing gum in my mouth, and like they called my name. I was like, shit! I looked like a tramp. So I had no shoes on. I had chewing gum in my mouth, and my belt was undone in my really nice dress that I had made. And then like I had no speech. All my label were like, oh, make a speech, because like the LA Times, the New York Times predicted that I'd win it. And then I was like, oh no, that means I'm not going to win it. Like it would jinx it, and it'll be the other way round. So I didn't even have a speech, so I was like crying, and then I was like, don't do a Kate Winslet, at the Golden Globes. Then I had to put it back and like go on about how much I love the Jonas Brothers and shout out a few people and stuff like that. But I can't describe the feeling. I don't even remember winning it. Like I don't remember going up. Like Snoop Dogg was next to me and U2 in front of me, and I was like, oh my god.
Adele would tour throughout the majority of 2009, playing shows across the world, but she also wasted no time getting started on her next album.
I want the second album to have a more of a distinctive sound than the first album. The first album intentionally doesn't sound like a body of work because it's my first album. I was like 18, 19 and don't know what kind of sound I want to have yet. I don't know what kind of woman I want to be yet. But now I know. So the second album, I'm listening to a lot of Alison Krauss at the moment. It's not going to be a country album because that's the biggest, fattest lie ever if I come out and start talking like,
well, that's why
howdy,
on
be a bit weird.
Because you're going to be a country artist.
But yeah, so like my music taste and how I play and how I sing has not changed, but grown up a lot and matured a lot. And without saying cheesy, I have grown up so much in the last couple of years.
Despite performing a duet of Lady Antebellum's Need You Now with Darius Rucker at a CMT special, Adele did not go country, but she did want to search for a sound that reflected more of a contemporary pop sound than the retro blue-eyed soul pop critics had classified her as. She spent a lot of time listening to all sorts of music, from hip-hop to country to pop, to try and measure what she wanted for her next album. Then she began to assemble a team of songwriters and producers that could help shape her second album. One of them was Ryan Tedder, who was best known as the singer of One Republic, but also a hit songwriter who co-penned Bleeding Love by Adele's classmate Leona Lewis, as well as Beyoncé's Halo. Also invited was Dan Wilson of Semisonic fame, you know the song Closing Time, and Paul Epworth, the UK's indie producer du jour, thanks to his work with hip acts like Block Party, Kate Nash, and Florence and the Machine. Feeling the raw sting of her recent breakup, Adele reached out to Paul Epworth in October 2009, and immediately they headed into the studio. She brought him a ballad she had begun writing a couple years ago about a boy which he felt needed to be stronger and more aggressive in its arrangement. She explained that her ex had told her she would lead a boring, lonely, rubbish life if she left him. The song was her way of saying, "Fuck you," to her ex, she would tell The Independent. So, with Epworth's help, they channeled the anger she felt from her recent split and used some guitar riffs he had previously written down. She would tell the Toronto Sun, "I was so upset. I was so angry. I was telling Paul, oh, Paul, let's write a ballad. That's all I ever do." And he was like, "Absolutely not. I want to write a fierce tune." As the two worked together, Adele began to feel her heart race, which became the beat of the song. The two of them came up with the verses and the chords of the song in under 15 minutes, with the rest only taking about 2 hours. They hardly touched the vocals and used what they recorded for the demo, because as he would tell the New York Times, Adele was going through something. She had had her heart broken and she was in pieces, and you could really hear that, her anger and her sadness. Sometimes I just don't think that you can recreate that or fake it. My hunch is that we captured something in a vocal performance that was going to be very hard to recreate. In the end, what they came up with was something called a gospel disco. Having recorded an album's worth of songs with Epworth, Tedder, and a handful of other producers, Adele decided to take the songs to Rick Rubin, the notorious yet celebrated producer who had helped shape the careers of Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, and Slayer, and recorded career-defining works by Red Hot Chili Peppers and Johnny Cash. For Adele to work with a veteran known for helping establish the contemporary rock of sound, metal, and rap music seemed like a far reach, but both parties were interested. Adele told Johnny Hockin,
"Rick came to Saturday Night Live when I did that, so it was already like, you know, I didn't really know it at the time, but afterwards it turns out it completely changed my life and my career, that TV show, and I was singing Chasing Pavements, and you can see in my eyes, because it's live, obviously, when I spot Rick Rubin behind the camera, and I literally just shit myself in my face. And he's doing these, as his bob, but the way he feels music is just amazing. There's no other person that you look at and go, that guy's into music, do you know what I mean? And I met him and he was lovely. We met up a few times, accidentally and on purpose. And then at the Grammys in 2009 was when he was like, "Let's do it." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it, Rick. It'll be great."
Adele headed to Rubin's Shangri-La studio in Malibu, California, where over 2 weeks they recorded her album, including a cover of The Cure's Love Song. There was only one problem. The songs didn't sound the way Adele had heard them in her head. They just weren't right. So she scrapped the majority of the recordings, including Rolling in the Deep, in which she wasn't able to recreate the rawness that was captured in her session with Paul Epworth. In the end, only 4 of the 11 songs recorded with Rubin made the album. Rubin would tell Rolling Stone that her decision caught him off guard, saying, "I was surprised because she had been so clear about wanting it to sound like it came from one place," he says. She wanted it to have a consistent band feel so that from track to track, it would sound like the same group of people in the same place, a unified album. I also understood she'd been listening to some of the demos for a long time, and when that familiarity builds, sometimes that trumps all. Rubin didn't seem to hold it against Adele for leaving so much of their work on the cutting room floor. Instead, he applauded her for bringing some originality and passion to pop music's lacking formulaic machine. He told the Associated Press, "She doesn't carry any of the baggage of many of today's pop stars, and it truly is about the music first, and her voice and her lyrics and bearing her soul with what she's saying. I would say what she makes is her art, and at no time does it feel like product. So much of pop music feels like product." With a mix of songs she had recorded with various producers, Adele's album was almost ready to go. After learning that the ex she had written all these songs about had become engaged, there was one more song for her to write. She called it Someone Like You, and wrote it to counter something as, quote, bitchy as Rolling in the Deep. She told Digital Spy, "When I was writing it, I was feeling pretty miserable and pretty lonely," which I guess kind of contradicts lead single Rolling in the Deep. Whereas that was about me saying, "I'm going to be fine without you." This is me on my knees, really. At first, her label wasn't fond of the sparse arrangement for the song. Again, the polar opposite of Rolling in the Deep, but Adele fought to keep it in order to free herself. And with that in the bag, she was ready to reveal this next era of hers to the public. On November 29th, 2010, Adele released Rolling in the Deep as the first single from her second album, and it immediately proved itself to be a juggernaut. Rolling Stone called it a breakup scorcher to beat all breakup scorchers, with Adele slinging bolts of regretful scorn amid gospel-tinged stomp and a gaggle of soul sister backup singers. The magazine also awarded it Best Single of 2011. Rolling in the Deep would dominate radio upon its release, and years later crossing over into multiple genres, which helped it reach number one in both Canada and the US. It paved the way for Adele's second album, which she would name 21, though originally she had planned on calling it Rolling in the Deep. In an interview with Black Book, she explained, "When I was doing interviews for the first album, people, especially the Americans, were like, 'Is your second album going to be called 21?' And I'd be like, 'F off, no. I've got more imagination than that.' As I was wrapping up this record, I was going to call it Rolling in the Deep, but that's a bit of a mouthful, and the Europeans would be totally baffled by it, because I'm baffled by it." I've changed and really grown into who I'm becoming so much since my first album, not just in my career, but also my personal life. Obviously in America, 21 is the legal age, but for me, it's like, that's it. You're on your own now. When you're 21, you're just out of being a teenager, and now you're a fully fledged adult. You've got to provide for yourself, and whatever you want, you've got to make it happen. 21 was a very obvious title, but it was the only thing that fitted. The album saw Adele documenting her growth from teenager to adult and laying out the heartbreak she'd experienced in that period. She explained the difference between the two relationships from her two albums to Aaliyah Jasmine.
19 was a breakup album. Yeah. 21 is a breakup album. So who was worse, 19 boyfriend or 21 boyfriend?
19, yeah. No, because 19, he was a cheater and stuff like that. And it was, obviously at the time, I was like, he's the one, you know. It's like, the world is ending. But it was still, when I look back on it, it was still a bit of a teenage relationship where it was sort of like you could wake up one morning and be like, yeah, I'm really not feeling this actually, and not be, a huge deal. Whereas with the guy on 21, we just fell out of love with each other, and that was more upsetting than having something to blame it on.
Right.
And we shared everything. We did everything together. It was all about us. It wasn't me or I or him. It was just
Released on January 24th, 2011, 21 would top virtually every country's album chart for a long, long time. Not only would it be the best-selling album of the year, it was also the best-selling album of 2012. To date, it has sold more than 31 million copies, proving that in the era of digital music, Adele reigns supreme. Not to be outdone by its sales figures, Adele cleaned up during award seasons. 21 took home Album of the Year at both the Brits and the Grammys. Rolling in the Deep also won Grammys for Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best Short-Form Music Video. In total, 21 took home 7 Grammy Awards. And for the first time ever, Billboard awarded a woman Artist of the Year, Billboard 200 Album of the Year for 21, and the Billboard Hot 100 Song of the Year for Rolling in the Deep. As Stereo Gun would point out, Adele was in Michael Jackson territory, as 21 became the closest thing to a Thriller-level phenomenon that this century has yet produced. Since the release of Rolling in the Deep, Adele has, of course, become one of the biggest artists on this planet. Alongside maybe only Taylor Swift and Beyoncé. Her ability to move between the boundaries of genre, appealing to fans of pop, country, adult contemporary, R&B, and even rock and hip-hop, has allowed her to achieve remarkable things, like sell out every single one of her 100,000 capacity Las Vegas residency shows within minutes. Rolling in the Deep has never really left our consciousness. Adele has released 2 massive albums since 21, but the song has become both her biggest crossover hit and her most identifiable achievement. Hell, Beyoncé admitted that Rolling in the Deep was an influence on her during the making of her album 4. Imagine influencing Beyoncé? But the influence goes even further. The OG Queen of Soul herself, Aretha Franklin, covered the song for an album called Aretha Franklin Sings the Great Diva Classics, because in her words, Miss Adele is not one to be messed with, listening to those lyrics. And Linkin Park recorded a live cover of the song that was a minor hit for them in 2011. Yes, Adele has been new metalicized. And that's just the start. Everyone from Ariana and John Legend to Patti Smith and Celine Dion has sung it live. I bet Celine killed it. Most recently, the song helped Saskatchewan's Rebecca Strong win the $1 million prize on Canada's Got Talent. The 20-year-old from Black Lake, Denessiline First Nation, belted out her best version of Adele to wow the judges. How about that? Naturally, when you have a song as omnipresent and powerful as Rolling in the Deep, you have no control over it. Donald Trump used it while he was campaigning for presidency in 2016. Adele's team issued a statement denouncing his use of the song, saying Adele has not given permission for her music to be used for any political campaigning. And in true fashion, Trump kept playing it, well, because no matter how you feel, it's easy to understand why he wanted that song above others. It's persuasive and striking, the kind of song that commands your attention. For better or worse. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of Adele's Rolling in the Deep.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these. This is Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
Rah, rah, ah, ah, ah. I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of Lady Gaga's Bad Romance. Lady Gaga is more than your average pop star. From the early modest days of sewing her own costumes and singing about disco sticks, she has continually reinvented herself along the way to become one of the planet's biggest stars of both music and film. She's won Grammys, an Oscar, and every award in between. She sold over 170 million records and generated hundreds of millions of dollars with her groundbreaking tours. She's stolen the screen next to leading men such as Bradley Cooper in A Star Is Born and Joaquin Phoenix in this year's Joker Folie à Deux. Heck, she's even pivoted to jazz with remarkable success, becoming BFFs with her mentor and collaborator, the late, great Tony Bennett. She's also become a tireless advocate for UNICEF, the Rainforest Foundation, and the LGBTQ+ community and mental wellness. And let's not forget, she is the matriarch to millions of little monsters out there who continue to worship their mother monster. How does that compare to your resume? Frankly, it makes mine look a bit trivial. Yes, Lady Gaga is one of music's greatest overachievers, but to quote one of her biggest hits, she was born this way. Actually, Stephanie Joanne Angelina Germanotta was born on March 28, 1986 in Manhattan, New York. Her parents Cynthia and Joseph raised Stephanie and her younger sister by 6 years, Natalie, in a duplex on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Now, before I go any further, I feel like it's important to point out that Joseph Germanotta is one of the persons responsible for giving us Wi-Fi. That is an actual fact. He's even called the godfather of Wi-Fi because back in 2002, when everybody was plugging cables into their computers to get an internet connection, Lady Gaga's dad founded Guest Wi-Fi, a company that installed Wi-Fi in hotels. So not only did he give us Lady Gaga, he gave us Wi-Fi. Her mum, by the way, was a VP at Verizon. No biggie. Anyway, back to our story. From the age of 1, Stephanie displayed a love for music so much that her grandparents bought the family a piano to encourage learning. Baby Stephanie would learn to walk by grabbing the piano leg and pull herself up so she could hit the keys. Then when she was 4 years old, Stephanie began playing piano. At first, she just wanted to do it playing by ear, but lessons would help her reach the next step of writing music. At the age of 6, she would write her first song called Dollar Bills, which was apparently inspired by Pink Floyd's Money. Wow, already listening to The Dark Side of the Moon at 6. That is impressive. At 7, she was performing in front of the camera, which she would share footage of with her fans 19 years later.
This is my first published piano.
When she was 11, Stephanie was accepted into the prestigious Juilliard School, but her Roman Catholic parents decided to instead send her to the Convent of the Sacred Heart. The affluent all-girls private school boasted many notable alumni, including Paris Hilton, whom Stephanie was said to be enamored with. Unlike Paris, though, Stephanie was not one of the cool kids at Sacred Heart, wearing mismatched clothes and pursuing her love for performing over boys. Outside of school, she began taking vocal lessons from Christina Aguilera's singing coach, Don Lawrence, who has continued to help her with her vocals. She also took acting classes on Saturdays, which helped her visualize and improvise. I remember the first time that I drank out of an imaginary coffee cup, she would tell New York Magazine. That's the very first thing they teach you. I can feel the rain, too, when it's not raining. By 13, Stephanie was writing songs, and by 14, she was performing at open mic nights in New York City clubs with her parents chaperoning her. Her piano training was paying off for her both as a performer and songwriter. She would tell The Telegraph, "I was classically trained as a pianist, and that innately teaches you how to write a pop song. Because when you learn Bach inversions, it has the same sort of modulations between the chords. It's all about tension and release." Influenced by her parents' taste in classic rock and pop, she used acts like Billy Joel, Pink Floyd, and the Beatles as inspiration, even forming a band with some friends. In an early appearance at Much Music in 2008, Lady Gaga recounted her days of playing gigs as a 14-year-old.
I really started gigging out in New York City when I was 14.
That's pretty young.
Yeah. My parents didn't realize then how great it was because they were like, stay home, and do your homework. But I couldn't stay off the stage.
But you obviously knew what you wanted to do at a young age, right?
Oh, yeah.
At the same time, Stephanie was also scoring lead roles in school productions of Guys and Dolls, and a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, which took place at Sacred Heart's brother school, Regis High School. Her success at school made her a target for the older girls in the plays who would give her the nickname The Germ. However, Stephanie's friends also are said to have called her Germ because of her last name, Germanotta. But in her high school years, Gaga's eccentricities would lead to constant bullying by her classmates. She would tell Rolling Stone in 2011 that she was teased for being ugly, having a big nose, and being annoying. She recalled that girls would say, "Your laugh is funny, you're weird, why do you always sing? Why are you so into theatre? Why do you do your makeup like that? What's with your eyebrows?" I used to do these really big Evita eyebrows. I used to self-tan, and I had this really intense tan in school, and people would say, "Why the fuck are you so orange? Why do you do your hair that way? Are you a dyke? Why do you have to look like that for school?" I used to be called a slut, be called this, be called that. I didn't even want to go to school sometimes. However, it was around the age of 15 when Stephanie would get her first taste of showbiz.
You girls see me out there?
Yeah, it looked like you were cheating.
Fucking starving. Hey guys, we got Mr. Goodwin's office open. Check it out.
That voice you heard there was 15-year-old Stephanie Germanotta in an episode of The Sopranos titled The Telltale Moose-Adele. In the scene, a teenage Gaga breaks into school at night with some friends, including AJ Soprano. They toss the coach's desk and a collection of trophies into the pool. While it wasn't a breakout star-making performance for Stephanie, it did give her a first credit on her IMDb page. Years later, after she became a superstar, she reflected on the cameo in the groundbreaking HBO series, telling Entertainment Weekly, "When I look back on that scene, I can see exactly what I did wrong in that scene. I didn't know how to listen in a scene. I was supposed to laugh, and it was sort of like cue, laugh. I see it and I go, oh, that's not a real laugh." Perhaps portraying a badass on TV gave her an idea, because while she was in high school, she began sneaking into clubs on the Lower East Side with her fake ID, where she was exposed to all types of music and entertainment, including avant-garde performance art and drag shows. Stephanie finished high school ahead of schedule at age 17 and was one of only 20 students who gained early admission to the collaborative arts project 21 through New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. She lived in an NYU dorm and studied music, getting a taste of what it was like to be an adult. Through writing essays on subjects like art, religion, politics, and social issues, Stephanie was able to develop her songwriting skills. At a talent show in 2005, Stephanie played a piano and sang 2 original songs, Captivated and Electric Kiss, coming in 3rd place. But school wasn't for her. She felt her studies were holding her back as an artist, and during her 2nd year, she dropped out to pursue her dream full-time. And while Time magazine may have ranked Lady Gaga as one of its top 10 college dropouts, I feel it's important for me to say, stay in school, kids. Unless you're the next Lady Gaga. In that case, follow your dream. Years later, she would tell Elle magazine, "I loved NYU, but I thought I could teach myself about art better than the school could. I really felt New York was my teacher and that I needed to bite the bullet and go it alone. I wasn't interested in going to frat parties and doing those sorts of collegiate things. I was really interested in the music scene and waitressing and cleaning toilets or whatever the fuck it was I was doing." Stephanie told her parents that she was quitting school, and her dad surprisingly agreed to financially support her for the first year. Living in the Lower East Side, she began honing her craft as a singer-songwriter when she caught the attention of producer Rob Fusari, who had co-written and produced the Destiny's Child hits No 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 and Bootylicious. He was looking for an artist to front a band he was putting together. At first, Stephanie didn't look the part, but once he heard her sing, he brought her into the studio and the two got to work. At first, they began writing rock songs, but Fusari didn't feel it was a genuine style for Stephanie. Although rock and roll was the genre where she felt she belonged, Fusari convinced Stephanie to give dance-oriented pop music a chance. Using the glam look of David Bowie, the theatricality of Freddie Mercury and Queen, and the pulsating synthetic sounds of European disco pop, Stephanie and Fusari created a new persona. All they needed was a name for it. During their time working in the studio, Fusari had made a habit out of playing Queen's Radio Gaga whenever Stephanie arrived. One day while the two were texting, Fusari typed Radio Gaga, which instead his phone auto-corrected to Lady Gaga. And just like that, an iconic name was born. Fusari and Gaga would reportedly begin a short-lived romantic relationship on top of their working relationship. And soon they would begin writing songs and setting up a domestic limited liability company called Team Lovechild LLC. That also included Joseph Germanotta as a partner. All they needed now was a record deal. This next segment contains descriptions of an alleged sexual assault. If you or someone you know has been affected by sexual assault, we encourage you to reach out for support. At the age of 19, Stephanie was sexually assaulted by a record producer she worked with. She wouldn't discuss the horrific events of that night until years later when Lady Gaga appeared on an episode of Apple TV's The Me You Can't See. In discussion with host Oprah Winfrey, she detailed what happened.
A producer said to me, "Take your clothes off." And I said no. And I left. And they told me they were going to burn all my music. And they didn't stop. They didn't stop asking me, and then I just froze and I don't even remember. I understand this Me Too movement. I understand that some people feel really comfortable with this, and I do not. I do not ever want to face that person again.
She further admitted that at a later date, she was pregnant as a result of the rape, and that the producer, who she refuses to name, abandoned her, dropping her off at her parents' house because she was vomiting and sick. I had a total psychotic break, and for a couple years, I was not the same girl, she continued. The way that I feel when I feel pain was how I felt after I was raped. I've had so many MRIs and scans where they don't find nothing, but your body remembers. During an interview on the Howard Stern show, Gaga would explain that the trauma didn't really settle in until years later because she was so focused on her career.
Well, you know, it happens every day. It happens every day, and it's really scary and it's sad. And you know, it didn't affect me as much right after as it did about 4 or 5 years later.
It hit you.
It hit me so hard.
It's a delayed reaction.
You're working so hard.
I was so traumatized by it that I was like, just keep going, because I just had to get out of there.
I have talked to other women who...
Somehow, Lady Gaga found the strength to keep going. Her ambition and determination would pay off in late 2006 when Joshua Sarubin, head of A&R at Def Jam Records, heard her song Beautiful Dirty Rich. Impressed with what he heard, he took Gaga's music to his boss, label president L.A. Reid, who proceeded to offer her an artist development deal. Sarubin would tell NJ.com there was something unusual about her. She sat down at the piano in a showcase room, and the way she played and the lyrics and the way she acted and sang was just so different and in your face, and you couldn't turn away. She was wearing these crazy white thigh-high boots and a black mini dress, and she had this presence like, I'm sexy, and I don't care what anybody has to say about it. Despite saying she was a true star who will change music, L.A. Reid never actually met with Gaga and dropped her from Def Jam after only 3 months because he didn't like her demos. He would tell Larry King that this decision would be one of the biggest regrets of his career.
A couple of months later, she does her demo tapes. They get to my desk, and I sit and I listen, and I say, I have this all wrong. I couldn't be more wrong. I don't know what I saw. I don't know what I loved about her, but today I don't feel the same. So I made the foolish mistake of letting her go. And a couple of months later, maybe 6 months later, one of her songs comes out on another label, and it starts to become a hit. And I tried to ignore it. I mean, I really tried to ignore it. Like, oh, it's not really going to be a hit. And this thing explodes. The song was called Just Dance, and Lady Gaga was born. And I felt like the biggest failure in the world.
Years later, Gaga would write about the rejection for her single, Marry the Night, telling E! News, it was one of the worst days of my life, and it happened quite quickly. But in my mind, when I think back on that period of my life, it all happened very slow. Gaga fueled her depression through eating junk food and watching TV at her Lower East Side pad, but realized this was actually a turning point for her. Instead of giving up, she told New York Magazine, that's when I started the real devotion to my music and art. She began to eat healthier and started going to the gym, although in addition, she has admitted to taking diet pills and cocaine. But she was getting into shape and experimenting more with her image. It was around this time that she met a singing burlesque queen named Lady Starlight. While the two of them were go-go dancing together at a bar called St. Jerome's in 2007, Starlight tutored Stephanie on everything she needed to know about the local art scene, helping her learn burlesque and establishing an image. In a 2009 interview with Caught in the Crossfire, Lady Starlight explained her influence on Stephanie, saying, my style, performance, art, and DJing inspired her persona. I was also one who told her to take off her pants because I rarely wore any myself. The two put together a burlesque act that included dancing in thongs and go-go boots, singing X-rated lyrics, and introducing pyrotechnics via a lighter and a can of hairspray. They performed as Lady Gaga and the Starlight Review, and threw a weekly party called New York Street Revival and Trash Dance, where they played hits from the 70s and 80s. Gaga would tell New York Magazine, "Starlight and I bonded instantly over her love of heavy metal and my love of boys that listen to heavy metal." Gaga and Starlight befriended local glam rock band Semi-Precious Weapons, who allowed the two to open up shows for them regularly. Gaga and Rob Fusari had become distant, but when he saw her perform one of her burlesque shows, he was shocked, describing it as Rocky Horror meets 80s band. Still, Fusari believed in Gaga, and when his friend Vincent Herbert was hired by Interscope to scout new artists, he swung a meeting with one of the biggest record executives in the world. Jimmy Iovine is one of the most powerful names in the music industry. Originally an engineer and producer, Iovine has worked with everyone from John Lennon and Bruce Springsteen to Tom Petty and Stevie Nicks. In 1990, he founded Interscope Records and helped shape the careers of Nine Inch Nails, U2, Eminem, Black Eyed Peas, No Doubt, and Dr. Dre, who he also co-founded the Beats brand with. Obviously, Iovine was someone who could help Lady Gaga with her career. While he was interested in seeing what Gaga could do, Iovine got Vincent Herbert to set her up with some songwriting gigs for Britney Spears, Pussycat Dolls, Fergie, and New Kids on the Block. She was also given a chance to perform at Lollapalooza that summer, which is how she ended up with blonde hair. After someone in the crowd yelled out Amy Winehouse, Herbert told her to try dyeing her hair blonde to make her look more distinct. She did it immediately. Performing at Lollapalooza also earned Gaga her first rave reviews in the press, as well as a citation for indecent exposure for wearing hot pants. After relocating to Los Angeles, Gaga began working on new music with Moroccan producer Red One, who worked with Akon and Enrique Iglesias. He helped Gaga with her pivot to a more commercial dance pop sound. She was obsessed with Andy Warhol and his multifaceted approach to art, devouring his books and using his ideas to develop her vision for the brand. Using Warhol's factory as a blueprint, she launched a collective under the name House of Gaga, which she would work on various projects related to Lady Gaga's music, such as costumes, staging, props, and music video production. She also adopted Warhol's love of wearing wigs and big sunglasses, and exploring his interest in queer culture through working with drag queens and promoting gay rights. Iovine passed on Gaga's music to Senegalese-American hitmaker Akon, who immediately took an interest in co-signing her to his Interscope imprint Con Live. With Akon and Red One, Gaga would write her first single, Just Dance, in only 10 minutes while she was hungover. In an interview with Artist Direct, she would explain the meaning behind the song. Everyone is looking for a song that really speaks to the joy in our souls and in our hearts and having a good time. It's just one of those records. It feels really good, and when you listen to it, it makes you feel good inside. It's as simple as that. I don't think it's rocket science when it comes to the heart. I think it's a heart theme song. Released on April 8, 2008, Just Dance instantly became a club hit, reaching the Billboard dance chart soon after. It would also hit the Hot 100 in the US, but it was in Canada where Just Dance would reach number 1. Gaga would show her gratitude for her Canadian fans during a visit to Much Music, where she would perform the song and sit down with host Leah Miller.
And I have to thank Canada because you guys were the first to pick up this record. Mm-hmm.
And you actually, on the back of the liner notes, you wrote the back. Did you write that when you were there?
I did it when I was there, yeah.
Wow.
And we had to actually rush produce the album because you guys wanted it so much sooner than everybody else did.
It's not even out in the States yet.
No, it's nowhere. It's nowhere but here.
That is crazy.
And it's number 1.
Yay! For all your fans.
Lady Gaga's debut album, The Fame, was released via Interscope on August 19th, 2008. With one of the biggest record labels behind her, Gaga was ready to break out. Speaking with MTV News, she explained the themes behind the record.
In my lyrics, well, the album is a concept record, so this idea of the fame is through and through, but it is through and through in a couple different ways. It's in there as somebody who, if you have nothing, whether you've got no money, no fame, you can still feel beautiful, dirty, rich, right? Because it's about making choices, about being passionate and having references, things that you pull in your life that you believe in. But it's also about self-discovery and being creative. The record is slightly focused, but it's also eclectic.
The Fame would continue to pump out consecutive hits over the next year. The sexually provocative Poker Face, about being with a man but fantasizing about a woman, was her second song to reach #1 all across the globe. For paparazzi, Gaga upped her visual game, hiring Jonas Åkerlund to direct the jaw-dropping video. You might remember his name from previous Encore episodes for U2 and Madonna. Gaga would call it the most amazing creative work that she's put together so far, telling the Canadian press, "It has a real, genuine, powerful message about fame whoring and death and the demise of the celebrity and what that does to young people." And then there was Love Game, where the world learned all about what a disco stick was. Well, Cam Lindsay from Much Music certainly did when he asked her at the 2009 Much Music Video Awards.
Is it possible to explain exactly what a disco stick is again? Okay.
Okay then. Full disclosure, Cam actually now works for iHeartRadio and may have even written these words I'm saying right now. Cam is an extremely handsome man. Wait, hold on, who put that in there? If some people in Canada didn't know of Gaga in the summer of 2009, they certainly did after her performance at the MMVAs. Performing Love Game and Poker Face, Gaga entered the stage from a New York City subway car, fought off the NYPD, and ended things by shooting fireworks from her bra. Or what I call a typical experience when visiting the Big Apple. Speaking with Much Music just after her performance, Gaga explained how she had achieved everything till that point.
Since I was a little girl, I used to say my life is music, my life is art, my life is performance, and it wasn't true. But I said it every day over and over again, and I worked, and I was very disciplined, and I rehearsed and practiced every day. And then one day I woke up and my life was art, my life was music, my life was performance. It's like, it's a dedication. Now it's not really a choice, it's just who I am.
The Fame ended up winning 2 Grammy Awards for Best Electronic Dance Album and Best Dance Recording for Poker Face. But it wouldn't stop there. Before the end of 2009, it would turn into a monster. In just over a year, Lady Gaga went from a complete unknown to the biggest new artist on the planet. She had made pop music exciting again, and she wasn't done with The Fame yet. In November 2009, she dropped 8 new songs packaged with her album as something she called The Fame Monster. She revealed how the additional EP of songs came to her to MTV's Alexa Chung.
Well, I'll just tell you that when I wrote The Fame Monster on the road, I really didn't intend on writing a new album at all. And I was like leaving my heart on the floor every night on tour. And my fans were giving me so much from the audience that I was really inspired to write more music. So I listened to my fans.
Very good.
The Fame Monster would replace its predecessor as the complete version of Gaga's debut album, helping it reach 18 million copies sold worldwide to date. These new songs once again found Gaga revitalizing the music video and turning the medium back into a must-see event with its singles. Anticipation grew for each of her videos, and on November 10th, 2009, she released the song that would become arguably the biggest song and video of her career. Once again produced by Red One, Bad Romance was an instant smash hit. With its rah-rah-ah-ah-ah, Roma-Roma-ma, Gaga ooh-la-la chant, Hitchcock references, and a pounding beat that channels German techno. Appearing on an episode of Fuse's On the Record, Gaga explained the concept behind Bad Romance to host Touré.
I want your ugly, I want your disease, all of those things that I'm saying. It's like when you love someone so much and your fear of losing someone is so deep that I want your psycho, I want your ugly, I want all the most disgusting parts of you that you think nobody will ever love. I love all of those things. Each song represents a different monster that I feel like I've encountered on the road. So my fear of love, my fear of alcohol, my fear of sex.
Bad Romance debuted at number 2 on the Hot 100, making it her biggest chart debut to date. It would also reach number 1 in Canada and basically everywhere else in the world, confirming that Gaga was now pop music's most exciting artist. The song's success was largely due to its eye-popping video. Directed by Francis Lawrence, who would go on to direct 3 of the Hunger Games films, the video depicted Gaga as a victim who's kidnapped by supermodels and sold at auction to the Russian mafia. Set in some blindingly white, futuristic bathhouse, the video featured choreography that borrowed from Michael Jackson's Thriller and some of Gaga's most outlandish outfits, including razor blade sunglasses and that pyrotechnic bra of hers that seems to burn her lover to a crisp. Yikes.
When we were preparing to shoot the Bad Romance video, we wanted the story to kind of shine on this very simple white background, a bathhouse, where we told a story about a woman that was imprisoned and stronger than all of the limitations around her.
Gaga would tell MTV News, "That tough female spirit is something that I want to project. It's meant to be. This is my shield. This is my weapon. This is my inner sense of fame. This is my monster." The video's director Lawrence would also tell MTV that out of all the music videos he directed, the response to Bad Romance was bigger than any of them. "I've been doing it a long time, but I've never really experienced an explosion with a video like this, where people so eagerly awaited it and blew it up on YouTube instantly." Her Little Monsters loved it too, and soon the video was cleaning up at the 2010 MTV Video Music Awards. Winning 7 out of 10 awards it was nominated for, including Video of the Year, Best Choreography, and Best Pop Video. Bad Romance would also collect 2 more Grammys for Gaga, Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, and Best Short Form Music Video. I would have to say the most impressive performance of Bad Romance came in December 2009 when she appeared on X Factor in the UK. This was the year before One Direction were on the show, in case you were wondering. Dressed as a bat, Gaga and 10 of her dancers emerged from a 20-foot bathtub, giving new meaning to a communal bath. And naturally, for the song's middle 8, Gaga sat on a toilet to play the piano, like most concert pianists are known to do. I wonder where that 20-foot tub is right now. Probably in Simon Cowell's bedroom. 2 more singles would follow Bad Romance, Alejandro and Telephone, featuring Gaga's biggest collaboration to date, Beyoncé, which gave us yet another epic, dazzling music video starring Quentin Tarantino's famous Pussy Wagon. I personally loved the Diet Coke can hair curlers. Bad Romance hasn't really ever disappeared from our lives. It's creeping closer to 2 billion views on YouTube and remains Gaga's most iconic musical moment. Thankfully, in 2016, we finally got some clarity on what the song's earwormy chant actually means when Gaga joined James Corden for a round of carpool karaoke. I'll let them break it down for you.
But it's like, it's romance. It's romance.
Oh, hang on.
It's
so
the fun
it's
of romance.
Ga ga ga.
Kind of. It's like the beginning of romance.
Romance, ooh la la. Oh, I see. You're saying romance, ooh la la. Didn't even know.
Yeah.
This is why these carpools are good for me. Just to get this sort of lyrical insight. Thank God.
As you might expect, Bad Romance was part of Lady Gaga's Super Bowl 51 halftime show in 2017. She saved it for last to close out the electrifying performance. She was decked out in football pads and surrounded by pyro, where she led a mass dance-along to her hit that ended with fireworks and her jumping off stage to catch a football. Like any good banger, Bad Romance also had its viral moment on TikTok after one user named Grace Grosky issued a hashtag Bad Romance challenge with a soaring a cappella rendition of the chorus. From there, it inspired many people to use the audio to tell their stories of personal trauma. And most recently, the song inspired headlines for her upcoming turn as Harley Quinn in Joker Folie à Deux. Literally every outlet that wrote about the film's trailer found some different way to use the song's title in the headline, because obviously, she and the Joker can write a bad romance, am I right? I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of Lady Gaga's Bad Romance on Encore, with new episodes every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.
Dive into the behind-the-scenes world of your favorite artists' interviews with us, Shannon Burns, producer Jess, and the entire iHeartRadio team on The Filter podcast. Grab your headphones. New episodes land every week wherever you get your podcasts.